Welcome, everybody. This is MACES. This is our Moravian Academy Parental Education Evening Session. It's the first one for the year, and we are just delighted to be here with you all. My name is Laura Wolf. I'm the Associate Head of School at Moravian Academy, and I think we have a really informative and important night of information sharing ahead for all of you. We are going to be talking about, think before you click, and we're going to be talking about digital safety, the impact of AI on our students' social media and other things. So, I hope you get all your questions answered and get a lot of great information this evening. I'm just going to start off by introducing a few people after I thank Jess McPherson, who has really made this happen for all of us. She has been behind the scenes and making sure that all of us got connected, all our I's are dotted, T's are crossed, that we have the right platform to do this on, just 100 really, really important details, and she handles them all with such grace, as well as the entire advancement team for supporting us. And of course, we're happy to have Adrian as our head of school here tonight to support us as well. So let's start off with some introductions of our panelists. Why don't we start off with Kate Murray? Kate, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Kate Murray. I'm a special agent with Homeland Security Investigations out of our Allentown office. I've been a special agent for 21 years now, and I investigate a bunch of different crimes, human trafficking, child exploitation, financial crimes, narcotics. And my office, we cover 6 counties north of Philadelphia, and Northampton is one of those counties that we cover.
Great. Thanks, Kate. Gretchen?
Hi, I'm Gretchen Kramer. I am an investigator with Bethlehem Township Police Department. I am the corporal in our Criminal Investigations Division, and I am a task force officer with Kate with Homeland Security Investigations. I also handle an array of different crimes. The majority of the crimes that I investigate are sex crimes, children abuse crimes, things like that.
Great. Thanks, Gretchen. Paige?
Hi, my name is Paige. I am an attorney at a local law firm called Kingsbury. We represent and are the solicitor for many school districts in the Lehigh Valley. And so one of the major areas I practice in is education law. And you'd be surprised how often this topic comes up and how often our clients reach out to us and ask us what to do, what are the next steps with concerns for the district and also for parents as well. So I'm excited to talk to everybody tonight.
Great. Thanks. And thank you so much. Ryan?
Hi, everyone. I'm Ryan Berger. I'm the Director of Technology at Moravian Academy. It's my 4th year at the school. Previously, I was a math teacher for 8 years with middle school students. So I've seen a lot of technology, and especially in middle school kids' hands. So coming with a lot of experience with that. But here tonight to share a little bit about what we're doing as a school to help keep our kids safe, to add that layer of protection for our kids, to make sure that what they're doing on the internet is good and not bad. So happy to be here with you all tonight.
Great. Well, as I hope you can all tell, we have a very deep bench here tonight, but if these 4 panelists aren't enough, I would also just note that we have our 3 campus directors with us as well, and they'll be able to weigh in a bit about what these things look like in the lived experiences of our kids at Moravian Academy. So thank you, Abby and Megan and Rachel, for being here as well. So just a quick note about the agenda so you have a sense of where we're going. We're going to start with a little bit of a very brief overview of the topic, followed by a conversation with about 5 scenarios, so you can sort of see how these things play out in the day-to-day lives of children. And then at the end, we're hoping to have some time for Q&A. So if you do have questions as they come up, in addition to some questions that were submitted online, we will be able to have, you'll be able to drop those in the chat, and we'll do our best to get to as many questions as we can. We also have resources to share at the end of the evening. And of course, you are always welcome to follow up with Ryan and any of our campus leaders if you have further questions. So with that in mind, we're just going to dive in. And I'm sure I don't have to say this to all of you, any of you, but over the past couple decades, we've really seen the impact of social media in both positive and negative ways on our students. We know that these algorithms are meant to get them excited and get them involved in their online lives. We know that that can be really fulfilling for different kids to connect with friends from summer camp and friends from far away and family and all of that. At the same time, we know it does open the door to letting outsiders and others who might not be so friendly to connect with them. In addition, recent advances in AI have changed how students interact, how they use technology, both as a relationship support or to enhance images, or sometimes to do things we may not want them to do when they're having a moment of anger or disappointment or whatever. And so we'll walk through some of those scenarios today, and hopefully you'll get a sense of some of the things we're seeing in education and that our colleagues here are seeing in the legal world as well, and give you some feedback so you know how to support your student. And should you find yourself in one of these situations, what your next steps might be so that you can support your child. So with that in mind, we will hop right into our first scenario. So I will read it, and I think Jess is going to drop it into the chat just in case you follow along better that way as well. So our first scenario is that a search warrant was issued for the home of twin 15-year-old boys after police received reports that they created AI-generated sexually explicit images of their classmates. So with that, Kate, maybe you could just start by sharing with us about how common situations like this are.
Very common. Kids nowadays are quickly going to AI to enhance photos, change photos. Some of the kids that use AI and change these images they're not doing it in a malicious way. You know, not every single one of them has a malicious intent to change these photos. They might, change it to put one of their friends in a funny situation. However, we're seeing a huge uptick in this. And I can give a little bit of the case background on this if you want me to right now.
Sure.
But so how this case came across my desk was I was contacted by a local police department in Berks County regarding a 7-year-old victim. This 7-year-old victim was talking to people on TikTok, who she believed was a YouTube influencer. It ended up, I was able to track this back through IP addresses and cell phone numbers, ended up coming back to this house in Georgia where they were twin 15-year-old brothers. And a week prior to me reaching out to Georgia Bureau of Investigations, they actually ended up doing a search warrant at this residence. I just recently talked to the lieutenant, and there are over 200 victims with just these 15-year-old boys. They started doing this at the age of 13, catfishing other individuals online. And when they received certain pictures, they might not have been sexual in nature. They then took the face of a classmate and put it on a sexually explicit image. So we're seeing a lot of this, and it's going to be an uptick the more AI programs are out there. And kids are savvy, kids are curious. I understand that. AI can definitely be used for the good. However, we're seeing a lot of young kids using this for not so good reasons.
Great. Thanks, Kate. Paige, can you share with us a little bit about the legal possibilities, or what next steps should our victims have?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I think you can look at this scenario in two separate contexts when we're talking about legal recourse or legal implications for these twin brothers. One, you have the criminal and the civil penalties and liabilities for the victims. The victims could press criminal charges as well as seek civil damages and recoup some monetary recourse in that way. Now, I am not a criminal attorney, but I know enough generally, and I'm sure that Kate or Gretchen could probably speak more to this in detail. But, Pennsylvania, there are certain crimes that this would fall under. And so when we're talking about this type of situation, we're looking at, you know, the simulation, the creation, the dissemination, and the possession of child pornography. And Pennsylvania actually recently passed last year in October, I believe it was October 29th, an amendment to the Crimes Code, specifically 6312, which deals with the simulation and the possession and the dissemination of child porn, and also 6321, which deals with the transmission of sexually explicit images of minors. And so that amendment last year was changed the law to include artificially to AI generated material. And so now, you know, people in possession of this, people creating these types of images, people disseminating these types of images, whether it's a real photo or whether it's a photo that they created themselves through AI, they could be criminally charged. And those crimes come with a severe, hefty penalty criminally. We're looking at third degree, second degree felonies, depending on the level of the act. And you're also looking at, you know, computer crime charges as well. And so that's the criminal aspect of it. You know, in terms of civil recourse, the victims could also sue the family or the boys and seek some form of monetary damage under what's called the revenge porn statute, depending on the circumstances of it all. So that's the one context you're looking at in terms of legal ramifications. And then when we look at the education sector, you know, what happens, you know, if this starts to bleed into the school, if it starts to create a disruption in the school. And so, you know, we have that Tinker case from the Supreme Court, which I'm sure everybody is somewhat familiar on. You know, the students wanted to wear armbands in protest of the war. They ultimately were disciplined for it. And what the decision of the United States Supreme Court was that, you know, students have their First Amendment rights within the school wall outside of a disruption. So if their speech or their expression causes a disruption in the school environment, then the educational institution can step in. And so when we're looking at social media and when we're looking at context and speech and expression online, creating these types of images is going to be speech. It's going to be considered expression. It's going to come with First Amendment protections in terms of, can the school district discipline these students for this act? And so, you know, there is a recent case out of the Supreme Court called Mahanoy. It was where a cheerleader sent a Snapchat message with vulgar language. She was not in school when she sent it. And what ultimately happened in that case was the Supreme Court held that the Tinker test still applies. So if First Amendment speech, protected speech happens off campus, off school hours, the Tinker test is going to apply, and there needs to be a disruption in order for the school to discipline. Now, I would argue here that, you know, if these are students in the same school, if they're in the same district, that's going to create a major disruption to the educational learning environment. And so you have education, student discipline ramifications as well. You also have Title IX ramifications where the school would probably need to get an investigation going in terms of Title IX to determine whether sexual harassment has occurred, is still occurring, and things along those lines. So when you're looking at this in totality, you have, you know, the criminal aspect, you have the civil aspect, but you also have student discipline as well.
Great, thank you. That's a lot to consider, both from the standpoint of the students who generated the issues and the victims. You know, Gretchen, I'm just wondering, you know, if God forbid you should have the police show up at your home and saying that they have reason to be concerned about the online activity of one of your children. What does that look like, and what is the best way for them to move forward? What kinds of things should they ask for from law enforcement? Just, can you give us a sense of what the process looks like?
Sure. If we were to show up in the sense of with the search warrant for your home, I know how difficult it would be, you know, to have the police come into your door with a search warrant. As easy it is for me to say, stay calm. I can speak for how Kate and I, we've worked together on a lot of these different things. We would explain why we're there. You would obviously get a copy of the search warrant. We would be looking for specific devices, perhaps with the twins, in the example of the twins. If they each had their own cell phones, we would most likely be there to seize their cell phones. It can also extend to, do they have access to a shared computer in the home that might be the parent's computer? Are they accessing that? We would also might be seizing that depending on where our investigation had taken us. So we would be looking to seize any kind of electronic devices in the home. We would just ask the parents would cooperate with us. Kate and I don't sugarcoat anything. We would explain to you exactly why we're there, what's going on. And it might be very shocking for you to hear that because you may have no idea what your kids are up to, unfortunately. A lot of times we find that with parents, they just think, not my kid, until unfortunately you find yourself in that situation and you're kind of shocked. So once we take their devices, we would get them to a forensic lab where they would then be downloaded, not by us, by other officers or federal officers who would look for the specific images pertinent to our investigation.
And sometimes those devices cannot be returned depending on what is found. So if there's contraband, if there's images found on that phone, those devices would have to be seized. Because it's basically, contraband is, treated like almost if it was like some narcotics, we cannot give narcotics back that was in the suitcase. We can't do that. So, but if a device is clear or clean, there's no evidence on there, we do return those devices because we don't want to keep devices that we don't have to. We don't have the space, we don't have the storage. And honestly, especially if people are cooperating, we will do our best to get that back to some sense of normalcy, at least when it comes to electronics.
Right. Thanks. I know that's a hard thing to imagine, but I think it's important for parents to know what, to ask for a search warrant, to make sure they know who is entering their home and all of those pieces. Paige talked a little bit about disruption and how that can impact the school environment. And so, Rachel, could you talk a little bit about how you could see a situation like this playing out at school and the impact it would have on the victims?
Sure. For those who don't know me, I'm the director at the upper school at Moravian Academy. I've been fortunate in my time here not to see an offense like this scenario at this criminal level, but we have certainly seen manipulation without consent of a student's words or image. And you can imagine if it's in a sexualized way, how personally traumatizing that might be for the victim, thinking about their perceptions of privacy and trust and safety. When I think about in the school context, students put in a position like that can experience such anxiety and fear of judgment from classmates and the perception that classmates are talking about them or they're all thinking about it, even if they're not. And that perception can really cause a heavy weight of anxiety that might make a student withdraw socially, withdraw academically, and avoid school or find themselves unable to focus academically because that sense of security and the only thing they can think about at school has been compromised and changed. The ripple effects, of course, would then go beyond the individual who's targeted to classmates who probably will be talking about it at least for a time, and the feeling that students might start to feel uneasy about their own safety and vulnerability and the confidence they have that they're going to be protected and that the school can protect them or their parents can protect them. And so when an incident like this might happen for the school, for so many administrators and support personnel and faculty, it really becomes an all-in community crisis kind of issue. Where we're planning communications, we're planning care plans for students, and on the victim side and potentially on the offender side, thinking about ongoing counseling, reactive education for the students who might be talking about it and need some messaging and need some language about how to talk about it. Ongoing education, what have we done that was designed to protect students from this kind of thing happening? Was it sufficient? What do we need to do in the future? And so just restoring safety after something like this might happen in a community really is an all-in effort work that might take the length of a whole school year or more to really ensure that we can build up and maintain again the trust of our students, the trust of our families, and reinforce the overlay of what happened with our school's values and what it means to live in community, and protecting a whole lot of vulnerable adolescents, even as we try to move the whole community forward, in figuring out how to talk about and process something like this. So luckily, I haven't had to experience a lot of it, but I keep myself educated with conversations like this one, so that we can be prepared for, inevitably what the impact would be if a school had to respond to something like this.
Yeah. Thanks, Rachel. I think that that's very well put. And I would just also to add to that is obviously if this happens to a member of your family, it's not going to just impact the child involved, but it'll impact you, your immediate family, and your wider circle as well, because these are big events. We're having really great conversation, but I'm going to move on to the second scenario just so we have a wider range of topics that we can use to discuss at the end when we have some time for Q&A, I hope. All right, our second scenario is that Tim, who is 14, has been talking to a girl online for several weeks. In the past few days, she has been asking him to send revealing photos to her. All right. Kate, I'm going to start with you again. Would you be able to give us a sense of how prevalent this situation is? And if he complies, what some possible outcomes might be?
Okay, yeah, so we've had an uptick in what we call sextortion. So it's sexualized extortion is the best way to explain it. I would say in the last 4 to 5 years, we've been getting a lot of leads or a lot of tips regarding, probably 14 to 16-year-old males is usually who we are seeing getting affected by this, that are, talking to girls who they think are girls online. They are age appropriate to their age, usually attractive females. They start in some sort of a very platonic kind of relationship, very platonic conversation, and then eventually it gets romantic. And then usually the person on the other side of the computer, not our boy, will send sexually explicit photos to them, and in return they'll ask for those photos back. So it's usually like, well, they almost guilt trip them into it. Like, well, I sent you something of mine, please send me something of yours. And as soon as that first image gets sent, that person who is not a girl on the other side, this bad actor, this possible defendant and target, whatever you want to call them, then kind of has that student in a very difficult spot, because now his options are go tell his parents, which he's going to be very uncomfortable. It's going to be very awkward. It's not going to be an easy conversation for him to have, or continue to trade more images. And usually what happens is, and I'm not trying to scare the parents that are on here, but the reason why we take these leads and these tips so important is because we've had a lot of these kids either attempt suicide or be successful with suicide, because they get put into such a difficult spot that they feel like that's the only way that they have out. So as soon as that first picture gets traded, they're trapped. So now additional pictures will get asked for. And if they don't share, then they threaten to basically expose all the images to all their family members and friends on all their social media.
Yeah. Thanks, Kate. I mean, I think that point about how vulnerable kids feel when that's out there and they know they've done something they shouldn't, and yet the only way to really move out of it is to share the information, and particularly in this case for many boys it's even they're even more reticent to share than perhaps some girls might be. Paige, would you be able to talk a little bit about the recourse that you might have if someone is solicits photos and then threatens to share and is doing the sextortion?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that this question not only goes to this specific hypothetical, but it could go to, high school kids in a relationship, and they're, sharing images back and forth, and they break up, and then all of a sudden one gets mad and is like, look, if you don't get back with me, I'm going to share all these pictures to my friends and I'm going to blast you on the internet. So it's not just applicable to a mystery woman or boy on the other end of a computer screen or on a chat. It's also, could be your ex-girlfriend, ex-boyfriend in the same school as you. And so, if that does happen, one, looking into this specific hypothetical and even the other example I shared, there's a couple things at play here. One, just having them on your phone or on your computer, you're in possession of child porn. You're in possession of sexually explicit photos of a minor. That is a crime. And that's a big crime. And then threatening to, extorting to send those videos or those pictures, that's another crime. Or even if they do disseminate them, now we have dissemination of child porn. Now we have dissemination of sexually explicit pictures of minors. And again, we have some electronic and computer crimes as well. And so if a student is in the position where they are being threatened that pictures that they previously sent are going to be put on the internet, or they're going to be shared to people that they were never intended to do so, they do have recourse in terms of contacting the police, in terms of talking with their parents and things along those lines. Because not only is it a crime to just alone possess these types of images, let just possess, but once we're getting into the dissemination or the extortion of and threatening to post them or to send them to somebody else, those are serious crimes. They're felonies, and so they have recourse in the criminal legal field. They have recourse in the civil legal field as well. So yeah, like I said, it's not just this hypothetical. It could be, two 16-year-olds who were boyfriend and girlfriend. They got into a fight. One got mad at each other, and now they're sending the pictures to their friends, making fun of them or something along those lines. So yeah, there is recourse. There's criminal recourse. There's civil recourse. There's something in Pennsylvania called the revenge porn statute. And so when that is in play, I've had adult clients in I practice family law as well. So, I've had adult clients in divorce cases where pictures were disseminated without consent, and they sought civil monetary damages, and we have cases where they were awarded hundreds and thousands of dollars in damages that the other party was required to pay them in terms of damage to reputation and things along those lines.
Thanks, Paige. Well, Ryan, why don't you take it from there? I mean, I think that, and we hear this sometimes, that parents think that, they know we have some controls on school issued devices. What are we able to monitor and what are we not able to monitor? And what are some things parents should be thinking about in order to help their kids prevent getting into this kind of situation in the first place?
Sure, yeah. So on our school devices, there's different levels of restrictions based on age level. If we're talking about ninth grade and above, our upper school students, they can email to the outside world. That's something that our eighth grade and below students don't have. So eighth grade students, they can only email inside to MMail people. That's our email domain. They can only email to other teachers or to students. Then the ninth grade and above students could email outside. We block our chat sites as much as possible. We have Messages app, some of our Apple devices, iMessage is blocked. But we also use Securely as our content filtering system, which helps prevent a lot of this. It will analyze school emails. So we'll see if a student sends another student email that has questionable material, then we'll get flagged on that. One that I get flagged on a lot, a student is doing research on Greek, I think it's Greek or Roman historical, and there's a lot of statues, and all these statues, well, they're nude. So like I keep getting flagged on this, and of course that's actual legitimate research, but which just, I mean, it shows we get hit when there's something that could be explicit. So that notifies campus leadership and our counselors. We also, I think I might have said, we will also see if there's threats against other students. So that Securely refers to it as grief between students. We'll see that happen as well. And then we address that as quickly as possible. I will say that the concern that parents might have too, and is that it's not foolproof. There's no system that could be 100% perfect all the time. And I think some kids think that my job is to just watch their internet traffic go by, and they say, Mr. Berger's always watching us. If I had time to do that, man, well, that sounds kind of boring. But we can't just actively watch. I mean, it would take 100 people to just watch the internet traffic that goes through from our students all the time. Um, so, there is that. It does make its best effort. And we're pretty confident in that best effort, which is why we chose that tool. I should also say that there are times when things happen outside of mamail.net. So if a student is using their personal email on a personal device, that's where our hands get really tied, because there's nothing that I can track. There's nothing that we can see. If it's happening on a non-school owned account or a non-school owned device. So I would just caution, like, it's not as securely is great on our school devices, but as soon as they step off and use their own device, that opens up that possibility that things could be happening as well.
Great. Thanks, Ryan. I think it's also important just to take a minute to talk about, if you have a child who is caught up in one of these situations, and we talked about how vulnerable and scary that can be for what kind of, and the possibilities of suicide and things like that, that begin to enter kids' minds when they feel very desperate. Megan, would you be able to just share some of the things that parents should be on the lookout for in terms of student behavior that might indicate that something more serious is going on?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. My name is Megan Franzischen, and I am the campus director at the Swain campus. And a lot of these things, if you have a child or received a safe to say letter in this recent history, you will notice that a lot of these signs are actually very similar. But before I go into some of them, I will say that one of the beauties of being in a community like ours is that our faculty, our staff, and our community, other parents, they know your children. You know your children. And so if you are suspicious that something is going on, or you notice that there are any of these things that are kind of ticking in the direction of negative behavior or things that you're noticing that are not typical, your gut is usually right. And so you should follow it. I think the other piece is having open and honest conversations with your children and approaching it. And I gave a brain science talk yesterday. As a parent or as an adult in a situation, you are the co-regulator. And so you are the person who can also bring the calm and the concern and the reasonableness when you're just trying to figure out what to do. And so some of the things that you might be on the lookout for, some of these are small things that can grow into big things. Some of these are big flags that will come up right away. First one is social withdrawal. And so these are things where the child may not speak to friends as much or not go to activities as much. They might withdraw from family members and spend a lot of time away from people in their room or in a basement away. They may not do the hobbies and things that they once enjoyed, participating in sports teams. They start to withdraw and kind of isolate themselves, whether on purpose or not. That's one of the things that you might see. You might also see unexpected behavior, mood swings, things that are not typical. And then this is the piece where the people in the community know your child, you know your child. You might see things like unexplained sadness or fear or irritability. A lot of teenagers get irritable and they can't describe why. And so that would be something to look for, as well as depression. The next one is a big one, and school students' heads are blown when we say this, but daily habits of how students and people in general take care of themselves can shift if something is not right in their lives. And so this could be impacting their sleep. It could be impacting what they eat, how they eat, when they eat, difficulty concentrating. You might also see changes in school attendance. They might try to avoid going to specific activities or going to school where they might be the center of attention, or they might feel like people are talking about things, which was mentioned prior. And then the last one is physical signs. So the physical signs could be very explicit things like harm or self-harm or threats to themselves, but it could also be something as simple as they haven't washed their hair for a week, and this is not typical behavior. They may not be taking care of themselves and wearing similar clothes, or their physical appearance may look different than what was happening before. And sometimes that's fine and they're experimenting, and other times it can be a cause for concern. And so if you are concerned that your child has been involved in any of these kinds of things, I would say in general, but also directly related to the scenario that we were speaking about, I think it's your job as the home parent guide is to make sure that you're approaching the situation with calm, a place of concern, not accusation to start. Obviously, there's accountability that will have to take place at some point, but figuring out what is going on, making sure your child is safe is the number one priority first. Making sure that they know that they're not alone. they might have to be accountable for their actions, but they are not alone. You are there to support them. The school is there to support them, to help them learn and make sure that they are safe and okay. The other piece is that the more that we know as a school, the more that we can partner with you. So if there's a concern about what's going on, or if you see something at home, I would encourage you to speak to people at school, to the leaders at your school, to counselors, to advisors. And if you're really concerned, there's Safe to Say hotlines, and there's lots of other resources through medical professionals and people like that, where if your concern is high enough, you should definitely go that route first.
Great. Thanks, Megan. Rachel or Abby, anything you'd like to add to that?
I thought Megan just did a great job.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to our third scenario. So Kayla, 13, has a wide friend group. She's the member of the popular group, but has friends outside of it. Recently, Sydney, who is seen as the leader of the popular crowd, has been sending Kayla messages criticizing what she wears, making fun of her friends outside the group, and saying that if she doesn't stop being friends with outsiders, she will ensure that Kayla never has a boyfriend. Kayla suddenly finds herself dropped from the group chat and starts receiving harassing messages from a phone number she doesn't know. Gretchen, can you talk a little bit about what Kayla and her family might be able to do? And is this a matter for law enforcement? Gretchen, we can't hear you.
Laura, they're having an issue right now with their Wi-Fi and just got off for 1 second. They're trying to connect via hotspot right now. So
Okay.
maybe if you want to call in somebody else for the other part.
Yeah, Paige, do you want to jump in and talk about the recourse they might have?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So, I mean, at this level, at this stage, I think it would be appropriate to notify law enforcement here. We have harassment, we have, bullying, and so I don't think it's unreasonable to go into that realm, specifically when we're, talking about, this age in social media and online bullying, because before social media, kids, where did they get bullied? They got bullied at school, but now it's a 24-hour worry that families and parents need to be aware of. And so, they do have legal recourse. And then when we're looking at that, who has the responsibility to protect these students? And so, we have the parent side of it, but, these students are in school for the majority of the hours during the week. And so, I always, when we're always dealing with student discipline issues, whether it's this type of scenario or whether, it's fighting or something along those lines, one of the first things we always hear about on the school side is, well, the other person was bullying my kid. And the first question out of our mouths every single time is, okay, did you let the school know about that? The school can only do so much, and it can only do things that they are aware of. And so what I would say to parents is, one, outside of school hours, we have to, have conversations with our kids about, the appropriate level, of communication between friends, and, the importance of not bullying, the importance of, maintaining those types of friendships. But also parents, if it starts to become an issue where this is brought up to your attention, and these are kids that go to school together, not even in the same class, but in the same building or in the same district, that starts to multiply when kids are in school Monday through Friday. And so once the school is made aware of it, the counselors at school get involved. We can make sure that these kids aren't in contact with each other during the school day. And so there is a shared responsibility. The school district or a school in general is standing in place of the parents. The Latin term is in loco parentis, is standing in place of the parents during those school hours. And so the school has an obligation to make sure those kids are safe, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, and things along those lines. And so, like I said before, the school can only do so much. We can only do what we're made aware of. And so what I would say to the parents, obviously, when the kids are out of school and they're under your supervision, you're monitoring their behavior 100%. But if things start to get out of hand, and it's not just a one-time off-campus bullying incident, starts to become targeted, it starts to become pervasive, that's when the school needs to be notified, because it's clearly not just happening outside of school, and it's going to affect the day-to-day lives of these students. And so, parents should notify schools teachers, counselors, building administration of these types of situations. They want to be made aware of these types of situations so they can handle it and tackle it in the school system. And so when we're talking about, okay, what can a school do if this bullying or online harassment is only happening outside of school? Can the school intervene and impose discipline if it feels it's necessary? We go back to those two cases we talked about in the beginning, the Tinker case with the armbands and the Mahanoy case with the cheerleader that sent that Snapchat. And so generally, again, students have First Amendment protections 100%, unless it causes a disruption. There are exceptions carved out of that ruling that says we don't need a disruption in school. And one of those, in order to discipline, and one of those exceptions is severe, pervasive, targeted bullying. And so when it gets to that level, schools have that responsibility, one, to just investigate the situation, but also place in reasonable and effective forms of discipline. And whether that means suspension, expulsion, detention, removing the students from the same classroom, making sure they're not in the hallways together, taking away electronic privileges during the school day. Maybe we might have to initiate a Title IX investigation, depending upon the type of communication that is happening. But I think the emphasis and what I'm really trying to say is that the collaboration between the parents and the school is so important when it comes to these types of issues.
Thanks so much, Paige. Ryan and Megan, I think you two are on deck for this part one as well. Is there anything you'd like to add to what Paige said about the responsibility of the school, how Moravian Academy might intervene, and or what we might do from the tech end of things if it's happening on our devices?
Sure, I can add. And for those of you that are members of our community, hopefully you've looked at our community handbook. There is a very explicit process that is mapped out in terms of how we will handle a situation like this. I will say that the goal of the entire process, and this is my Smith version of the goals, but to make sure that when we have a bullying or harassment situation, our response is to address the behaviors, figure out what actually has happened, halt them as soon as we possibly can. 9 times out of 10, when you start to investigate what happened, you figure out that something else actually happened first. And so that's a piece of the investigation, figuring out if something else led to what actually was reported, creating a care plan or a situation at school. Like, what does this actually look like at school, and what can we do to keep everyone feeling safe and comfortable? And then finally putting a protocol in place to make sure that the behaviors stop. So the actual pieces of the process look like the reporting. That could be screenshots. That could be a parent calling the school. That could be someone reaching out to an advisor who then alerts the campus director or the head of school. So the reporting is first. It could also be something that they've witnessed at school. Someone has seen these repeated behaviors and this is not acceptable. That would mean that the investigation process is triggered for us. This is typically led by the campus director, and we immediately alert the head of school to say, we're enacting a bullying response protocol. These are the pieces that we're doing. These are the people that will lead our investigative team. And at each campus, it looks a little bit different, but they're all members who are designees of the campus director's office. And there are timelines within which we commit to making sure that we're addressing those things appropriately. Sometimes there is mandated reporting involved, not always, not often, but sometimes. The school also has, as Paige shared, like, our obligation is to treat these things as needed. And if it's a really egregious offense, there may be consequences from a school standpoint involved. Those are all also outlined in our handbook, but they could range from a restorative conversation all the way up to expulsion, depending on how severe they are. There's also a commitment to the prohibition of retaliation, which means that if there's a protocol put in place, we are committed to making sure that we're protecting the people who actually reported what happened, and making sure that they are safe, so that in the future, we don't want people to be reluctant to share things because there was retaliation involved. That's not fair. It's not safe. And that goes completely against what we believe as a community. And finally, one of the pieces that I think is actually the most important, once you've figured out in a bullying situation what actually has happened and you believe you have the full story, and you create those supports. What does the care plan look like for the people? What does this actual support look like at school? And that might involve the counseling team. It might involve the director's office. It might involve advisors. It might involve outside supports where we seek counseling and help and support for students involved because they need more support than we can provide at school. And all of that would be done in partnership with each of the families involved at the school. Ryan, do you have anything to add?
Just a little tiny bit because I want to get to those other scenarios too. The tech from the tech side of things, pretty much what Megan said. We work hand in hand with the campus leadership team, and we go through a documented investigation. So it's not just like, oh, I just want to look and see what this person was doing. It's well documented. We can pull files from Google Drive. We can pull internet history. We can pull emails to see what was going on. And as I mentioned before, we do get those reports proactively too. So it will get an email from Securely saying, hey, there's this email that looks like someone's bullying someone else. And most of the time, it's just someone saying something silly to a friend that Securely takes as bullying. But I'd rather get those than miss out on any. So we do get a lot, but most of them, thankfully, are just real simple things. And then they're addressed very quickly by the campus teams.
All right, on to number 4. Here we go. All right, Jake is a 13-year-old student and he is proud of his first phone. He's not allowed to have social media, but signs up for Snapchat anyway. He's not sure why, but he starts receiving messages saying that he must send money and share personal information. What's likely going on for Jake, and is this unusual? So Kate or Gretchen, if you're able to talk now, that would be great. And if you're not, we'll figure it out.
I think we're good. I'm not sure what's going on with the Wi-Fi here,
Great.
but I'm using my phone hotspot. So with Snapchat and other social media, they have these functions such as like, quick add. So you can quickly add anybody and everybody, whether you know them or not. So a lot of times these bad actors, which is like what I like to call them, they will basically just throw out, a big fishing net, right? And see who they can catch. So they'll put something out and they'll start chatting with kids, with underage minors, and they'll start working on trying to see if they can take advantage of them. They'll start asking for personal information, pictures, and then again, this kind of ties in with the sextortion that I was talking about earlier. This does happen a lot because there are, again, a lot of bad actors that are hitting all social media platforms, as well as, some of these bots that are out there as well, that are big into the, some of the different financial scams that we're seeing. So, if your kid is going to have social media, I know that's one of the questions, having a very real conversation with them about the risks and the responsibilities that they need to have on social media, I think is a good start. So, if this happens, Jake knows what to do, come to his parents, ask for help.
Great. Thank you so much. Abby, I'm just wondering if you can expand on that and help our parents think through some of the things they might want to consider as they're getting ready to have their child have their first device, and setting them up for success in the long run.
Absolutely. Well, hi everyone. I'm Abby Mahone. I'm the director of the Historic Downtown Campus. And I think all of you being here tonight is the first important step, right? Knowledge is power, and that's so important. And a situation like this, or all of the ones we talked about tonight, are so hard because, of course, when we give our children their cell phones, we know how important boundaries and consequences are. And also, we have to deal with the very real possibility that children might not report some of these things that are happening to them, like Jake in this scenario, because of fear of punishment, worrying that a parent might take the phone away, restrict their internet access, these things that are so, so important in our kids' lives. And so some guidance that I always love to give to parents, and I try to remember myself as a parent, right, is before you have the cell phone even, but if they already have it, doesn't matter, you can still do it, right? You're fostering an open, non-judgmental relationship. You're emphasizing curiosity. I want to understand what happened so we can keep you safe, right? You're avoiding shame and overreaction when they come to you with issues, because we want to make sure that we're not discouraging future disclosures from the kids, right? So we're staying regulated, using neutral tone of voice, things like that. And that we're also regularly checking in with kids about their experiences in a neutral way with curiosity, right? So one, those open, non-judgmental relationships. Next, super important to set clear boundaries and expectations. Whatever that looks like in your house, you're going to review it with them, whether it be apps, services that are allowed, explain the reasons behind the restrictions for your family, acknowledge that different families are going to have different rules, and this is ours for these reasons, right? Encourage them to talk to you about what they're feeling, and keep that open dialogue. And then realistically know that they're going to have hard moments. And so one of the things we do at our house is we create a trusted adult plan. And what this means is that we identify a specific adult, and it can be anyone. It doesn't have to be me. It can be someone at school. It can be a counselor. It can be an outside adult that they have a good relationship, that if the child comes upon something doesn't feel right online, that they can go to them to talk through it. Make sure that as part of this plan, the child knows that they won't get in trouble for reporting. Even if they break a rule, it's super important. The most important thing is that they know they have an adult that can help them through that. You're educating them about all of these online risks, and then also thinking through what is right for your family in terms of supervision and the tech safeguards that you want to use for your child, right? So is this parental controls, privacy settings, monitoring apps, without making your kids feeling like they're spied on? You're open about it, right? But that's a really important part of this as well. And then checking in periodically, continue to build that trust, but check in periodically about how they're doing.
Great. Thanks so much, Abby. Ryan, was there anything you wanted to add to that?
Abby, you said it so well. That's almost like identical to what I was going to say. And I think that's something that we work on as a school with the kids too. Like I know that personally, when I was just in the middle school, if kids came to me with something that they did, I might just joke with them just a little bit, but I'd say, no, it's fine. Like, let's look at this together. It's not a matter of like, oh, you shouldn't have done that. It's, oh, you made a mistake. We all make mistakes. And having that open door is really huge to have with your kids too. So.
Great, thank you. I know where time is just running away from us, but I do want to get to this last scenario because I think this is something that particularly our high school families think about. So our final scenario, and then we'll turn things over for some Q&A, is that Katie, who is 18, and her friends, thinking that they are just joking, sometimes use racially biased language and body shaming terms in talking to each other. When Katie was a freshman, she and some friends had a couple of these exchanges over their fake Instagram accounts or Finstas. Somehow they were found by a college admissions officer. So what steps can Katie and her family take to navigate the situation? And what would have been helpful for Katie to know in advance? Rachel, you are on deck.
Katie, yes. So I think that the most important thing for Katie and her family in the first step is to acknowledge the harm. Like not minimize this as just joking and she was so young, right? Because this was 4 years ago. She was in ninth grade or 3 years ago. But actually try to lean into this as an opportunity for meaningful growth. And so I would hope that even in the face of the fear that they probably are feeling, right? What are going to be the repercussions? What are going to be the consequences of this? What could I do to protect my kid more in this situation? To try to get over that as quickly as possible and into let's learn. There's real growth to be had here. And this is a student probably about to go on to independence and young adult life, and they're still with me. So I can teach them something, or I can ask the school to help me. So they can start by reflecting on how, words reinforce bias and exclusion. And even when you're sharing among friends, like what are the boundaries around the words that you choose to use? And so I think Megan said it earlier in the call, like our community handbooks are great resources, not just to understand what we're going to do as a school, but maybe for language to start having conversations with the students. We have lots of great language around bias and social aggression, or things that like seem like jokes, but how could they be, harassment in a different context? And so it might be useful to talk about that for Katie and her family, or to go to the school and find a trusted adult like a dean of students or a grade dean or a counselor who can talk the student through, or talk you and the student through navigating a situation like this. Where is the learning to be done, and what are some good resources for us to help educate her? And so that real focus first is going to have the best impact on Katie long term, is like, how can I learn from this mistake that I made and actually change my, approaches in the future? It will also be authentic then if she does need to address colleges about this in the future, right? If she is able to demonstrate, I've done some bias education, I've reached out to my counselor or our, director of community and belonging, so that she can be honest and humble if she is working with college counselors to communicate that narrative to the colleges. Our college counselors are well versed in helping students own mistakes, even if that mistake is, I got a C in my Algebra 1 class in ninth grade. If you're demonstrating growth and you have a story to tell about that, there's ways to show colleges your growth and your learning from that. But it will show if that's authentic. So really that first thing I would say is, make it an authentic learning experience so that you can then communicate on to colleges. I think what Katie, would benefit from having known is that private accounts, group texts, right? None of these things can really be trusted as private, especially if they're on social media. And so just teaching teens as early as possible, or younger adolescents from when they have their phones, pause before you post. Is this something you'd be proud to have linked to you later? Is the digital version of you acting like you want to be perceived in the real world? Because it's going to be this. There's a chance that it becomes reflective of you in the real world. As your digital citizenship becomes your real citizenship. And so thinking about empathy and integrity in online interactions as much as we do in the playground.
Thanks, Rachel. I think that's all really helpful in terms of just reminding folks that when mistakes are made, how important ownership is, and that there's always a path forward. And again, back to that parent-child relationship and just how critical that is for navigating these tough times. Paige, could you just talk a little bit? This is one of these places where, we have to have a partnership between home and family, but whose job is it to educate our students about digital literacy? Where is the balance in that, and how do you see it happen best?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like I said before, this is a collaborative effort, but the school and the administrators and the staff are with these children during the school day. The kids aren't supposed to be on Instagram. They're not supposed to be texting, Snapchatting each other. But like, as everybody said here, and as Abby explained, the school has some significant resources to help children become knowledgeable about this and to help parents navigate these types of conversations and these types of circumstances. But at the end of the day, the school's not buying these phones for the children. So these phones are purchased by the parents, and it should be ultimately monitored by the parents. And, with the growing technology, there are, depending upon the age of your child, and depending on the types of boundaries you might have with them, there are wonderful applications that you can download on phones to help monitor. There's one called Bark that helps monitor and limit screen time. It helps disable apps. It helps disable certain websites. You can look at text messages and things along those lines. But I think having an open and honest conversation when these phones are purchased, the second these phones are purchased, we're not handing our kids these phones without having a serious conversation about the types of consequences that could come with this type of behavior. And like Rachel said, once it's posted, it's out there. It's out there forever. No matter how long ago it was posted, no matter how young you were, it could always potentially come back to haunt you, unfortunately. And so I think these types of open and honest communications and conversations between parents and kids are so important. And I can understand and appreciate the notion that, a teenager doesn't always want to sit down at the kitchen table with their mom or dad and be lectured about, the pros and cons of social media, the do's and don'ts of texting your friends and things along those lines. And so if there are trouble or there is a little bit of, tension or pushback in those types of circumstances or conversations, I would invite parents to reach out to a school counselor maybe and say, hey, I'm having a little bit of a difficult time here talking to my child about this mature and serious conversation. could you give me some tips or some resources, or even have a conversation with them so they could hear it from a third party adult, so it doesn't just sound like, mom's trying to, have a serious conversation with them. But at the end of the day, families need to be cognizant of, a school has so many responsibilities as it relates to maintaining the safety and welfare of the students. One of them is, tackling social media and tackling online bullying and harassment and AI images and things along those lines. But there's only so many hours that the kids are in school, and so many things the kids should be accessing in school. And so if that conversation is starting at home, it is a lot easier to handle in the school setting.
Thank you so much, Paige. And I really appreciate all of the insights everyone has shared. I do want to acknowledge that we're coming up on an hour, and so I do understand that some of you may need to drop off, but I'm hoping that some of us will be able to stay on just a little bit longer. I would love to invite our panelists to see if they have anything else they'd like to share about preventative measures or anything else you think that the scenarios didn't reveal that you would like to mention, and then maybe we'll do 1 or 2 questions, but definitely maybe go another 10 to 15 and then we'll call it a day. Some of us have to get kids to bed and things like that. So I want to be respectful of that too. Panelists,
if I could just follow up a little bit with,
yeah, go ahead.
With things that kids are posting now and the importance that parents place on them with the permanence of this. I can speak firsthand just from and probably Kate too, with the hiring process for us, especially the older teens looking at careers in college. We do background investigations, and we have had candidates who have been precluded from being hired due to past posts that they've made and things that they've put online that are forever in their footprint, unfortunately. Just a little tidbit that it really does matter, depending where you want to go with your career.
All right, Jess, I'd love your thoughts. We have some questions that were submitted in advance, and I saw there were some things going through the chat. Anything from the chat you think we should pull from to start with?
I did want to just quick mention something from the chat, because I know we were hoping to get Gretchen as well as Kate's take on one of the scenarios where we had a little technical glitch. And so we did have someone ask about, I'm just trying to find it here in our chat, about the previous scenario of harassment from friends using an unknown cell phone number. Would our guests from law enforcement be able to share their thoughts as to whether this is something parents should involve law enforcement or not? And so I know, Laura, you were kind of hoping.
100%. Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up. I did kind of want to touch base with that. We were having some problems, but yeah, 100% come to us. Don't think twice about it, to come and file a police report if such things are happening, especially if it's not happening. I know you guys have specific school devices that you can track and find information, especially if it's coming from a non-school device. Come and see us. We will absolutely look into that. We have resources that we can try to find the number, who it belongs to through technical avenues. But harassment is an absolute, it's an arrestable crime. Sometimes it just comes down to, we have a conversation with the reporting parent and the victims, coming down to notifying the other parent, that this is going on with their child, is harassing or bullying another child. And sometimes that just puts an end to it. Sometimes it doesn't, and we need to move towards a harassment charge. So absolutely, don't think twice about coming to the police.
We'd rather you come to police, and then not come to us.
Mm-hmm.
We'd rather you come to us, so then we can kind of talk you through the scenario, talk you through what's going on. And then we can also probably put your mind at ease too. And like Gretchen said, there's a lot of things that we can do, technical and legal, where we then can identify who that person is on the other side. So if you're having a second thought about it, or if you're not sure, just go to your police department and report it. Rather be safe than sorry.
Great. Thank you. I'm looking at the set of questions that were submitted, and I think they're two big themes. So maybe we can address those, and then of course we hope the conversation continues long after this, because this is going to be one we're all navigating together, I think, for a long, long time to come. One of the sets of questions is, what is the school doing, and what kinds of things do we do at school to set our kids up for success? And then the other question is parents looking for advice around guidelines for usage and ways to stay ahead of their kids, and ways that and best controls that are out there. So I'm wondering if our campus directors can talk a little bit about the preventative work we're doing at school, and then Ryan, maybe you can jump in with some of the best controls you think that parents should explore.
Sure, I can take the first stab at that, and then Rachel and Megan join us. One of the things that I'm so grateful for working at Moravian Academy is that we do have this amazing educational leadership team that is made up of the campus directors on each campus that's able to work together, share expertise. And one of the things that we've worked really hard on in the last year is developing some proactive programming. I sometimes think of it, when you're on a job, you get training on the job. For our teachers, we have professional development before the year starts. What is the student professional development that they need in order to know how to school, what the expectations are, right? So it may look slightly different per campus based off of the culture and the schedule, but the year opens up with a lot of explicit instruction on what are the expectations, what the supports are to meet those expectations, whether it be technology or behavioral expectations, or even how to, get the lunch tray, right? And then also being really clear with our students that we have high expectations with high supports, but we also have consequences if you're not meeting those expectations. And I know George and Sarah and I will talk to our students, and we say, like, that's a hard part of our job, and sometimes it doesn't feel really good. And also it's there to keep you safe, to protect our community, to hold you accountable if you've made a mistake, to be able to learn and grow from it. That's what the consequences are about, right? To meet your child exactly where they are and help them grow. And so those are some proactive measures we've taken. I'm not sure if Rachel or Megan wants to add anything else to that.
I'll add in the high school context, the lens of, we know that we're preparing them, in a developmentally appropriate way, especially as they get into the upper grades. We're preparing them to be independent and out of your homes and out of our hands. So we're doing a lot of education around transferable skills that they'll be able to take into life beyond. So thinking about, like, in advisory this fall, we're having a sequence of, we had a session that was about, recognizing AI. So, like, how do you vet the source of material, and how can you check whether that's like a real source? And so, kids diving into advisory with images, with social media posts, identify, was this real? Was this a bot? And trying to figure out what are the skills that they use to assess whether it's real or fake, so that they can transfer that to whether it's a social situation or an academic situation, the recognition that, online spaces need to be vetted for validity. We're going to transfer that into I think it's early December, an advisory session specifically about deep fakes and the AI generated images, and doing some education with them about, what is Pennsylvania state law? How would you find out what your state law is in the state that you're going to go on to and live in, after high school, right? You may live in Pennsylvania or New Jersey now. What's it going to be like when you leave here? And just thinking about those transferable skills, so kids can be safe, in the environments that they're going to go into that we cannot control and predict. And thinking about sex education and all of the conversation we have about honoring your own values and boundaries, and honoring other people's values and boundaries, and how that transfers into an online space as well. So that's part of our ongoing education with students as well. So I just wanted to add that element about thinking about, when they're no longer with us, will they be okay?
Yeah. The only other thing that I would add, just to piggyback on what Abby and Rachel shared, is that I will say that I feel like this field expands every year. We learn things. There's new things happening in the world. There's new tools. There's new AI. There's new things that kids cook up in ways that they can get around networks and all kinds of things. And so the project is never finished. It's never like, oh, we taught them all the tech things and now they're going to be safe forever. And so that's a huge part of that ELT team. with Ryan and lots of many other people in our community, because I think it's a constantly changing field. Kids are very crafty. And I also think there's just so many dangers in the world, and that's the piece where we want to partner with you. So it will never end. And we're aware of that and continue to work on it.
I don't know what you mean about it never changing, Megan. That doesn't, I don't know. Like, I feel like every time I blink, the AI itself, just generative AI, is a whole new thing every few seconds. So I learned something new, and then all of a sudden it's changed. Looking at it from a tech side, from what Laura was asking earlier, there are plenty of ways at home that you can use network monitoring. I do definitely want to, let's echo, I think Abby said it earlier about don't just do it as like a surveillance thing. It's definitely going to work a lot better as a conversation with your kid first. And, hey, this is why we're doing this, not just I don't want to be like a big brother. We at my house, we have an Eero network, EERO, which does let us have some settings that have parental control. So you can turn off internet for devices after 10 p.m., or you can block certain sites. You can see what your kids are doing on there. Plenty of different networks have that. I just learned about one in the chat just a few moments ago. That there's a slew of different tools that you can implement in home. I think the biggest one, though, that I'd suggest, quite honestly, and I think our campus directors would agree, is the devices have a common space for them at night. Because I think the most issues that we see happen when we do get those reports through securely is it's like 10 p.m., 11 p.m., 1 a.m. Those are those biggest issues. And those could be solved really easily by just having that iPad in a common space, or having their phone in a common space, so that's not a distraction while they should be sleeping. I don't know how they stay up till 1 a.m. I'm exhausted, and it's 10 p.m. and they need more sleep than I do. So just doing those kind of things are just simple of just keeping it away. But there are also tools, and feel free to email me. I think my email's in the chat. If you have any questions about particular tools, I'd be happy to help investigate those with you.
Laura, can I jump in to add something?
Absolutely.
Because Ryan gave a great inroad to this. It is simple and it is not easy, just to recognize that, like, yeah, we can say have a conversation with your student, have a conversation with your kid, right? It's gonna be better and more effective if instead of policing, you're doing partnership and you're saying, we together are gonna talk about it. I just want to acknowledge it's hard for us to do as administrators with students. It's much harder to do it as a parent with your own children. So it is not easy, but it is a simple step as far as, like, if you're feeling lost at sea as a parent of, like, how can I possibly stand in the face of all of this technology onslaught? It is a simple solution, and it's to communicate and create that trust with the kid that I'm having this conversation with you. We want to support you and we want to keep you safe. I recognize that it can be uncomfortable and difficult, especially if you've not done it yet. And that if you do it together, you can minimize that fear of, I don't want to be that one parent who's restricting my student when I think all of their friends' parents are letting them do everything. I hear constantly from parents that you're all doing this. You all want to have these conversations with your kids. So take some comfort in the fact that you're not alone doing this. And if your kid says, well, all my friends' parents don't make them, that's not true.
Yeah. That's a great point, Rachel. And I also think, there's always an opportunity to think as a parent what you're modeling for your students as well, and invite them into that conversation. Like, how do you feel about my phone use? And you might learn some interesting things there too, because they're watching us as well for cues as to what is good and what is right. And they really do want to please you. It is 8:13, and I really do want to be respectful of everyone's time. And I'm so grateful for the wonderful turnout we've had tonight. A special thanks really go out to Gretchen and to Paige and to Kate for being our outside support. And I hope you also see just how passionate and how much they care about our children and our youth too, and how eager they are to help protect them and to make sure that they have a fantastic experience and a long and fulfilling life that, that they deserve and that you want them to have as well. They really have been wonderful community partners. And I would also just say thank you again to our advancement team, especially Jess for making this happen, to Adrian for being here and always supporting us, and to all of you. This is my first opportunity to play Oprah, and I hope it went okay. But also, we are sharing some resources with you tonight. You'll get those via your many Moravian Academy resources. This is also going to be recorded and posted so you can share it with your friends if you think it was helpful. But we are just so glad to be in partnership with all of you and grateful for you giving up your Wednesday night to spend some time with us talking about this really, really important topic. So have a wonderful evening, everyone.